Having grown up in an Italian household, hunger was not something I frequently experienced. In fact, if there was ever a concern that I might even be approaching hunger, that would be quickly rectified by a snack, which generally consisted of a hearty sandwich, a piece of fruit, and some cookies. Therefore, the concept of fasting was something that I never really knew much about. That being said, our family always did observe a certain degree of that during Lent. For example, while it is most customary for Catholics to abstain from meat on Fridays, particularly the Fridays of Lent, in our home, we also abstained from meat on Wednesdays during Lent. As a result, we almost invariably would eat tuna casserole that night. Definitely not anyone's favorite. Also, unlike most of our meals, that was the only thing put on the table. And there was never much of it. One year, I can remember the thing I gave up for Lent was my bedtime snack. The pain of this sacrifice set in immediately, the very first night of Lent that year on Ash Wednesday, after our meager dinner of tuna casserole, because I knew that I would not be eating anything later in the evening. And for perhaps the first time in my life, that night, I went to bed hungry. What an eye-opening experience. I obviously compensated in the morning by probably having a larger than usual breakfast. But nevertheless, I realized that for one time only, and by my own volition, I had experienced something that countless multitudes around the world experience every night. That year, my Lenten fast helped me not only to grow in discipline, but also in awareness of the suffering of those with whom I had very little contact. So why do we punish ourselves with fasting? What's so important about it that our blessed Lord himself would include it among 3 imperatives that he indicated were to be demanded from all of his followers? There are multiple reasons why fasting is important and efficacious. I would like to review those with you now, in advance of starting another Lenten pilgrimage soon, as well as to consider some creative ideas about how we can fast well. The Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches us in paragraph 1434 that the interior penance of the Christian can be expressed in many and various ways. Scripture and the Fathers insist above all on 3 forms: fasting, prayer, and almsgiving, which express conversion in relation to oneself, to God, and to others. It would seem that there is only one goal in taking up these penitential acts, including fasting, and it branches out in 3 directions. The sole goal is individual conversion. And conversion is what Lent is all about. The 3 ways that this conversion is said to have influence is upon ourselves interiorly, our deepened faith, which renews our relationship with God, and our interpersonal relationships, which in this contact we call solidarity. First, regarding ourselves, the effect of fasting upon our interior conversion is that we learn the value of voluntary self-denial. A very grave danger in this life is that we would grow too comfortable. When one does, eventually all that we are accustomed to, is being comfy and cozy. This pursuit is ingrained in us from the first moment of our birth. As infants, the minute that something wasn't quite right for us, whether we were hungry, thirsty, tired, lonely, scared, or in need of a fresh diaper, what did we learn to do? Scream our lungs out. And when we did, how would some loving person respond? By doing everything he or she could think of to restore our comfort. And once that was accomplished, the crying stopped, and we would go back to sleep. But we never really grow out of that, do we? I hope we don't scream our lungs out anymore when afflicted by discomfort. But we are also not inclined to welcome it. And if you don't believe me, just consider that heated seats are now a standard feature in most automobiles. If we are going to spend this life preparing to leave it, then we cannot grow too attached to the comforts that it offers us. This voluntary self-denial of fasting allows us to welcome discomfort, so as to be reminded that our true home is a place where there will be no hunger, only comfortable bliss. Secondly, the effect of fasting upon our relationship with God is that we can learn the intrinsic value of making atonement. When we freely give something up, which is not only good in itself, but necessary, it is a form of self-inflicted punishment. Reason never demands that we withhold good and necessary things from ourselves, like food. Therefore, because we are rational and aware of this, freely choosing to do so is not contrary to reason, but an effective exercise of our freedom. And any time that we choose to limit our freedom, it is an implicit acknowledgement of the fact that at other times we have abused our freedom, which is another definition of sin. Making atonement for sin is something which Jesus definitely accomplished on the cross, but he invites us to take part in that work by uniting ourselves to his sacrifice. Taking penance upon ourselves can be something which we do out of sorrow for our own sins, as well as out of sorrow for the sinfulness of the ignorant, who do not think to make atonement for themselves. Anytime we set out to undo sinfulness in our lives and in our world, we are necessarily drawing nearer to the Father. And finally, fasting influences our conversion towards others. How? By what I referred to in the beginning, when I recalled going to bed hungry one night. Freely choosing to forgo something we have, realizing that there are many others who don't have that option because they simply don't have it, serves as a helpful reminder that we need to be grateful and we need to share. It is harder to walk past that collection bin for food hampers when the pangs of hunger are still fresh in our memories. Fasting unites us with the hungry the whole world over. Obviously, fasting is a powerful tool for conversion on many fronts. And if we take effort to be converted, especially during Lent, It will be time well spent. However, we must be broad-minded. Fasting should not only mean foregoing food. In one sense, the Church defines very clearly that fasting, in the proper sense, is defined as taking only one full meal and 2 smaller than usual meals, without snacking in between, on the day of the fast for those who have reached the age of majority up to the age of 60. This fast is meant to be observed on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. But there are other ways to fast. If we use as our principle the denying of ourselves of certain comforts, this can stretch far beyond our intake of food. So this Lent, I encourage you to be creative in your fasting. Look for ways to deny yourself many little comforts so that we can turn that screaming baby inside each of us into a peaceful child destined for heaven.